Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's lesson.
Today, we will be focusing on the battles of World War II, the rise of totalitarianism.
And don't forget about the Holocaust.
So, does anyone know what started the Second World War? How about what countries were involved? How about the effects it had on the world?
To start off, we should probably mention the fact that after World War I, Germany wanted revenge. They didn't like the Treaty of Versailles and the terms that came with it. They wanted to put their military back into the zones that were demilitarized according to Britain and the US. And Britain and France, they didn't believe Hitler. They thought he was just, being stupid and dumb, which he was. But that would lead to major repercussions because they should have taken him seriously.
With weakened economies, people were desperate for a solution. Hitler took advantage of this and rose even higher as a public figure in Germany. He wanted German domination and only one race, the Aryan race.
Yeah. So then I said to him, I did not see that coming. Yeah. Oh, I gotta talk to you later, man. I'll be right back. Now, initially, European powers weren't all that opposed to Germany having more power, even when it was a contradiction with the Treaty of Versailles. They all agreed at that point that it was a bit of an unfair agreement. So when Germany started claiming more power, things like Great Britain and Neville Chamberlain allowed them to, with things like the Munich Conference and also with things like the policy of appeasement. Now, the problem with the policy of appeasement was that Germany wasn't looking for a set amount of freedoms or a set amount of land. It wanted as much as it could get its hands on. First, they annexed Austria, and the international community did little to nothing unless you count complain. Then, they annexed the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia that they really would rather have kept, thank you, but the whole point became moot when Germany annexed the country in 1939.
The international community had set up condemnation towards Germany, and the German Reich then decided to unleash war against itty-bitty Poland. Poland, giving it their best shot, were still sadly defeated in a couple of months. This led to a very exciting period of Europe going into absolutely nothing.
In countries that had been mostly independent, production was still very high. However, for countries that were highly active like Germany, production was not at its high point.
Now, the Sitzkrieg was ended when the Germans invaded Norway and Denmark. Then came the Netherlands and Belgium. And finally, the French army was destroyed. Now, the French are a special case. See, the French had lost their nationalist spirit, so they were already going into the war with a losing attitude. And as any good life coach can tell you, the first battle is in your mind. So, the French also hadn't adapted their military strategy. They were still using World War I tactics. They built things like the Maginot Line. Now, this was adapted for World War I defense capabilities. The Germans, meanwhile, being highly industrialized and advanced, took one look at the Maginot Line, complimented the French on their enthusiasm and dedication, and then walked through the Maginot Line, as they had highly advanced weaponry. Now, after the French had fallen, they set up a puppet government firstly under Marshal Pétain, but then later the French government was reformed under Charles de Gaulle. Now, the new changing times and the New World War caused severe technological advancements to be made. Now, with those technological advancements, new military strategies were needed to catch up. For example, the Germans had a new, highly efficient, highly effective form of warfare that they called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Now, lightning war was effectively the Germans using their increased offensive capabilities to maneuver around enemy encampments, therefore going for what they were protecting without even having to deal with the enemy. This effectively left the French army defenseless and allowed the Germans to take them out in a matter of months. It also worked highly effectively against the Polish. What you're seeing is actual colorized footage of an RAF Luftwaffe air battle.
And when the war was over, America ran Japan, the Allies ran Germany, and Italy barely ran itself. The war created spheres of influence between the USSR and the Allies, leading to the Cold War. And it sure is chilly out here.
These countries were split into different allies and pacts from before the war, during the war, and after the war. This map shows how they sided with the common factor of supporting or not supporting communism. Some countries, as you can see, were allies to the superpowers, therefore being second-hand sided against or for communism, while others were truly decided based on their rulers, such as Hitler and Germany.
During World War II, women became more integrated in society. Men left to fight for their countries, and women filled in their positions in the workforce. Women's rights became a huge issue because women didn't want to go back to the workforce when the men came back. Also, women gained rights such as increased educational opportunities, job availability, and voting rights.
Here, you can see how the different countries decided to help their economy, which also leads deeper into effects after the Cold War. They were trying to find solutions to regaining stability that had been long lost before the war and was only worsened after.
Stalin industrialized Russia. Then he increased power of the Communist Party with his war communism.
80% of Allied casualties were from Russia.
Right. Now let's take some time to focus on the perpetrators of these horrible crimes, the Nazis. Now, the Nazis' chief ideology was based in that of anti-Semitism, or discrimination against the Jewish people. Now this brought itself about in a number of different ways. Firstly, legally. Now the Nuremberg laws discriminated against the Jewish people and forced them to wear a yellow star on their chest to display their Jewish heritage. Then, things took a much more sinister turn. On the night of Kristallnacht, thousands of Jewish stores and homes were broken into, looted, and robbed in a single night, all mandated by government authorities. This was the beginning of a long period of anti-Semitism.
As you can see, there was not only discrimination towards Jews in Poland and Germany, there were many minorities all over Europe being exterminated.
Now, during this time of relative peace, I think we should focus on what the Germans were doing. Now, they weren't conducting any offensive campaigns, but they were definitely not loitering around. They were getting busy loading up Jews into boxcars and transporting them into concentration camps. Now, they'd already had them concentrated into ghettos. All they needed to do now was transport them to the area of their demise, and that they did with extreme efficiency. Moving back a bit, we had the whole conflict of the Italians entering the war as German allies. They attempted to push the British out of North Africa, forcing the Germans to help them out due to their ineptitude. German officer Erwin Rommel had started off great and faced many successes, but at the Battle of El Alamein, which was fought in November 1942, under the British leader of General Montgomery, the British were able to push out the German and Italian forces back to Tunisia.
Auschwitz became the most famous and worst extermination camp in Europe. When surviving prisoners arrived, Dr. Mengele and SS officers would sort the people based on their physical appearance for who could work. The rest would be immediately sent to the gas chambers. Another sad truth was that the Jews were not the only targeted group. Gypsies often felt the wrath of the Germans as well. Really, it was any group of people not qualifying as an Aryan race person. Germany, however, was not the only place in Europe exterminating Jews. France would send Jews over. Other Eastern countries took matters into their own hands, and anti-Semitism kept growing. This chart shows a certain percent of the population that died from different countries. The Soviets were unprepared for an invasion when the Germans came. However, since Germany had accumulated so many enemies, Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviets were able to form a pretty unlikely alliance. After achieving several key victories in the Barbarossa offensive, Germany made a crucial mistake when they turned away from Moscow and moved instead towards Stalingrad. At the Battle of Stalingrad, the Germans were turned back in the decisive Battle of the Eastern Front.
As for the problems between Germany and Great Britain, Hitler wanted to try and appeal to the fact that they had many similarities. The attempt was never truly pursued due to the fact that Winston Churchill came to power and devoted his life to, as he said himself in his famous speech, fighting them on the beaches. This led to the Battle of Britain. The Luftwaffe, or German Air Force, had more in numbers, but the British had radar and advanced technology. While fighting continued to be a battle mostly in the skies, German leader Hermann Göring began staging attacks on British cities, even though he was a morphine addict and probably shouldn't have been in charge anyways. This caused Hitler to eventually drop the invasion of Britain and move to his true dream, the defeat of the Soviet Union. Of course, Britain had to go through major suffering, also known as the Blitz.
This is an example of warfare during World War II.
We hope
you enjoyed
Our course
on crashing into World War II.